Hi, Cora Stack again, Dr. Stack. Let me just talk about that paper again, just to hit a few more points. It's very detailed, so it goes into all the abuse scandals that we might be familiar with, the Stardust victims, the Magdalene Laundries, the CAMs, the various Tuesday scandals, the BlackRock, all of those institutional abuse scandals, and it looks at and it's the same pattern over and over again, really, in many of the cases, and these kind of systems are not working for these people. But it's not just that; it's every in every institution, really, it's the same pattern. But these are particularly traumatic for those individuals. So I kind of have understood why these groups were all let down and really using the same tactics, if you like, to shield the institution from any accountability. So when the state mirrors the abuser, how bureaucracy and law gaslight citizens, and how we can fix it. Everybody's saying that our government has turned into, a combination of bureaucrats, government are influenced by lawyers, and it's all gaslighting citizens, and how we can fix it. Too often today, governments and institutions are failing the very people they're meant to protect. That's why we're talking about, the decline, the serious decline in democracy. When citizens seek fairness or accountability, they enter systems that speak the language of justice, but sadly behave like abusers. They're denied, delayed, dismissed, silenced through legal procedures designed to protect the institution, not the truth. This is what I call institutional gaslighting. It is when the process itself becomes a form of psychological manipulation, appearing fair while reinforcing the power imbalance. My new paper, When the State Mirrors the Abuser, I haven't, my first version is poor. The second version is much more extensive. It's not online yet. Explores how this happens across Ireland and internationally, in courts, inquiries, investigations, health investigations, family disputes, banking conflicts, child welfare, commercial disputes, all of those, every type of dispute. The pattern is always the same: lawyer up, control the narrative, and wear people down until they give up. That's what happens. People get worn down, who are seeking justice in these kind of situations. When you're not all lawyered up yourself, forget it. That's not justice. That's not equality under the law. That's not anything like equality of arms. And one access to justice is in both constitutions, and equality of arms is in the EU protocols that I put up just online there. It's not justice; it's performance, and it's costing lives, health, trust, and democracy itself. But there is another way. Just looking at this now is not everywhere, but in countries where there is a certain amount of this, it is certainly improving. It is certainly helping hugely, but it's not widespread. I'm looking for the evidential based evidence of how this is improving situations and better engagement at the polls in places where you have arbitration, but it's still not wide, sector wide. So I'm proposing trauma-informed arbitration. That's with psychological input, and trying to input humanity, empathy, compassion, and all of that back in, and giving them huge value in organisations, which they are hugely valuable. Empathy and humanity, these are hugely valuable. These are being diminished or reduced, or reducing them, gaslighting them to have no value. I mean, that's outrageous in my opinion, but that's what's happening. A system that begins not all with accusation, but with understanding. Arbitration that's guided by trauma psychology or psychotherapy can resolve conflict early, cheaply, and fairly, before it becomes a courtroom war. Obviously, there are situations where the court is obviously ultimate arbiter in terms of decision making in these such situations. So the court is always the last line here. So we're not leaving the court out of it. We're saying just arbitration first, but obviously the court has to have the last say. That will be consistent with the legislation, the constitution. It's about keeping power close to the people, not institutions. It means that truth telling, empathy, and accountability become part of how the state actually functions. Is empathy a part of how the state functions? Well, if it was, I don't think there'd be such a big spoil vote. Absolutely not. When citizens are believed, heard, and respected, we reduce trauma, we save public money, and we rebuild democratic trust. This is what my research is saying. Just should never feel like another form of abuse. If we want democracy to survive its current crisis, we must make justice humane again. Trauma-informed arbitration isn't just legal in form, it's moral repair. I'm Dr. Cora M. Stack, and this is why I believe empathy must sit at the centre of every system of power. So my paper is again When the State Mirrors the Abuser, the Global Failure of Trauma-Informed Arbitration. Dr. Cora M. Stack, PhD. See you next time. Hope I've shared some interesting ideas, and my paper is saying that Ireland's current systems constitute breach of several of our EU rights, allegedly. But it's very clear, I think. So if someone was to take a case against Ireland with its current systems, we'd have a good chance of winning. But we'd prefer to have the trauma-informed arbitration system before we ever had to take more legal cases, wouldn't we? We'd all prefer to have a system with empathy before we had to force it on the Irish people. It would be much better to resolve it with locally, more or less, and get people to change understanding now that they're in breach or in potential breach of serious EU. Can't pick and choose. We joined Europe, and they have a very good EU charter in Portugal. I have got that charter in plain language up online. It's not legal advice. It's just it'll give you. And the same with the Constitution. Now, reading the Irish Constitution in the plain language is very joyful, and it's nothing like Irish society today. And reading the European Convention of Human Rights, like your rights on paper, but there's no rights in practice. I mean, if there were, there wouldn't be such darkness, and there wouldn't be such disillusion with democracy. So there's rights, and there's access to those rights, and there's a huge gap between both. So that's a failure of that means you've no equality of arms, you've no access to justice. So unless you have access to justice, you can't go from your rights on paper to your rights in practice. So that's a huge issue, that barrier to justice, which we talked about earlier. So that's the story. So that's wishing you all the best, and I'm asking people to sponsor Mr. Niall Byrne. He's looking for €1 or €2 from everybody if they can afford it to sponsor his campaign. He's on TikTok, and he's all compassionate and all for bringing the light back into Ireland. And I think it's a lovely philosophy that he has. Healing. He is into healing and bringing light, and he's very much into quantum physics, and that kind of thing. And he's passionate about physics and quantum physics. But I think it's nice that he's also interested in healing, and really our trauma arbitration is also about healing the wounds that have been caused by the current systems we have in place that represent so-called democracy.